Hello, my darling listeners. I have a quick announcement for you. If you're just now, as of June 22nd, 2023, finding our show, first of all, welcome and thank you for listening. And second of all, we want to let you know that we are now on Patreon. And if you would rather listen to this episode and all of the episodes to follow ad-free, then head on over to patreon.com/perfectlymarvelouspodcast, link in the description. And yeah, sign up for our Tits Up tier, where you can listen to all of our episodes ad-free for just $5 a month. Just $5, 5 little tiny doll hairs. And you'll get all of our episodes over there ad-free from now on. And our listener feedback episodes will also be video episodes. It's a whole bunch of fun. We would truly appreciate it. And we truly appreciate you, all of our listeners, regardless of where or how you choose to listen to us. But if you really love what we're doing and you'd like to patronize our perfectly marvelous efforts, we would so greatly appreciate it. This podcast is a labor of love, but every little bit helps as we continue to, give you guys more content, quality content. And throwing us a little coin, really helps us take more time to work on the show for you guys. And we have some exciting stuff in the works. We got interviews coming up, and we're going to be covering Only Murders in the Building. So you're going to have a lot of perfectly marvelous content. So yes, keep listening for those announcements. Join us on Patreon. Don't forget to come over to Facebook and join our Facebook pages for Maisel and Only Murders in the Building. And all the links, are in the show notes of this podcast. So thank you very much for listening, my loves, and enjoy the show. Tits up. Well, hey there, you. Yes, I mean you. Have you just finished watching an episode of your favorite television program, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Are you looking for a podcast to enhance your viewing experience? Well, look no further. Welcome to Perfectly Marvelous. Join our hosts Erica, Kara, and Jade as they provide you with hours of witty banter, behind-the-scenes fun facts, and oh, so much more. Now sit back, relax, and get ready for a perfectly marvelous time. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Jade.
I'm Kara.
And I'm Erica.
And this right here is Perfectly Marvelous, a podcast dedicated to the phenomenal show, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Today we are covering Season 5, Episode 8, The Princess and the Plea.
Written by Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino, and directed by Daniel Palladino.
Woohoo!
Yes.
All right, so first of all, we have an exciting announcement for you listeners.
Yay.
We are going to announce the mysterious interview guest that we have lined up for after the finale. It is Matilda Zittigis, yes! Zelda.
Yay.
Zelda will be our special interview.
Oh my goodness.
I'm working on possibly getting another couple of interviews. I've sent out some stuff and hopefully we'll hear back, but if I can't get anybody else, at least we have Zelda. And I know we have a friend in common. Yeah. Oh my God, it's going to be great. Yeah, even before I met her, she had agreed to do this interview because we have an actor friend in common. My friend Amy did a short film with her. And so, yeah, I'm really excited. So we just want to say, listeners, when you leave your feedback next week, if you have any questions that you would like us to ask Matilda, just let us know and we will ask her for you. So get excited. I'm really excited. Oh, there are so many things.
I know. I can't wait.
Oh,
I know. Oh my God.
Especially after last week's episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And the wedding, oh my gosh. And now I'm just thinking about all the other Zelda moments. I was keeping track of all of the Zelda moments when I did my rewatch before we started podcasting season 5, because I knew that, that we had reached out to her and she said, yes, I'll do it after all the episodes come out. And so I was taking notes on all these Zelda moments that I want to ask her about. So yeah, listeners, if you are, rewatching any episodes or if you want to go back and find some of good Zelda moments to rewatch and just like ask her specific questions about anything that she's done on the show, I'm certainly excited to do that. So yeah, that's coming up.
Yay.
And that'll be out. That'll be like a separate episode after we podcast on the finale. So, before we get started with this penultimate episode, we have a couple of shameless plugs. I realized that in all of our shameless plugging of other Podcastica shows, I haven't mentioned the other shows that I have already done on Podcastica. So, I will tell you, listeners, if you have not watched the show Dead to Me, or Poker Face.
So good.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
First of all, I'm jealous of you if you haven't watched those shows, because boy, would I love to be a person who had never seen those shows, and so I could go back and watch them for the first time. Like, whenever you're ready, guys, if you've never seen Dead to Me or Poker Face, there is like a gift waiting for you. There's a Christmas present waiting for you to unwrap. Go and enjoy those shows, and then enjoy the podcasts that I was on. They're called Dead to Us. It's our Dead to Me podcast. And Murder Magnets is our Poker Face podcast. And, they're not too darn bad, if I do say so myself.
No, those were great ones. I will say Erica and I both also guested on Murder Magnets.
Yes, we did.
I also, that show was so much fun to cover. I am jealous of people that have not seen Poker Face and Dead to Me.
Same.
That is just, prime TV viewing.
Yes, enjoy. Okay, so we also have a couple of other things happening, as always, at Podcastica. Obviously, Yellow Jackets coming to the end. It's dramatic, it's intense, it's emotional. If you have not gotten in on the drama, get in on it, guys. It's not too late. So if you're not watching Yellow Jackets, what are you doing? Watch that show after you watch Mrs. Maisel. Actually, maybe Mrs.
watch
Maisel.
Mrs. Maisel
Might
is
be
a
a good
perfect palate cleanser for Yellow Jackets.
Although Mrs. Maisel is getting intense, so I don't know how much of a palate cleanser, but it is certainly a different vibe.
Yes.
But yeah, so we got Yellow Jackets podcast called Yellow Jackets WTF, and we also do a really cool thing with that podcast on YouTube. There's like after shows. So other hosts that aren't a part of the actual podcast come on, and you can see their beautiful faces on YouTube. And they just kind of recap, go over, highlighted moments. And just because there's so much to cover with this dense, amazing show that we have to have more than one, just a podcast to cover it. So that's something else. And then we are covering some other shows I'm just going to go through, like From, the show From.
So
our
good.
podcast. Yeah, our podcast is called What is Fromcast. And right now they're covering season 2 of From, and they have a ton of interviews. They're interviewing all the actors. They just interviewed Sean Mahumder. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Ricky He, Avery Conrad, Phoebe Rex. They're all stars of that show. So check out What is Fromcast. And we have another podcast called The Cast of Us, which is a Last of Us and Fear the Walking Dead podcast. And Jason and Randy just covered the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 on that one. And soon they're going to be wrapping up their coverage of Season 1 of The Power, another amazing Amazon show that I just found out about. And I'm really excited to maybe check that show out, because it doesn't look like it would be my thing. I always say that, but it's just, that trailer was really, really, really interesting. So yeah, check out The Power. And they're now into season 8, the final season of Fear the Walking Dead, that's a big deal. There are some diehard Walking Dead fans. So I don't know how many Maisel fans will also be fans of The Walking Dead, because it's quite a different thing. But if you're a fan of that show, we got that podcast. And was there another one, Kara, that you wanted to mention?
Oh, I was going to say that right now, if you're a Patreon member, a patron of Podcastica, they're doing the Fear the Walking Dead roundtable rants, because if you do watch Walking Dead, all three of us are Walking Dead viewers and also love Mrs. Maisel, but Fear the Walking Dead has kind of taken an interesting, terrible turn the past couple of seasons, so I'm going to be doing the roundtable rant for the most recent episode coming up. And
kind of like Missiest series.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say, I find them very entertaining. So if you're interested in, going and joining Patreon for Podcastica, you can access those. And then There are so many other good rewatch podcasts going on right now. And Strange Indeed. I know, Jade, you were going to talk about that one too.
Yeah. Sweet Tooth. They're getting into the season 2 coverage is like rocking, you guys. It is great. And if you have not checked out Sweet Tooth, seriously do it. It is like such a sneaky, great show, like unexpectedly amazing and delightful.
It is.
And
sweet.
Right? It's and listening to Rima and Paik cover anything. As I've said before, they're my favorites. I love those two so very much, and you guys will too. And another podcast that Paik is also on with Daphne is my brain just farted.
Run for your lives.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say it that way. I'm sorry. That's funny. Oh, shit. I love you, Jade. That made me so mad.
Yes, Run for Your Lives, duh. It's an excellent podcast about monster movies and like disaster
movies.
Yeah,
disaster movies, yes. Jesus, my brain.
he did this amazing rewatch of all the Tremors films.
That was awesome.
That was amazing. So, yes. And he does.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the next one's with Paik and Daphne is also on Yellow Jackets WTF. So if you like guests, the hosts on one podcast, you can hear them on another.
Yeah. Well, we have some. I love our hosts. I mean, I love our listeners. I love our hosts. It's just such a fucking love fest over here. Oh, it's grand. And in addition to all of that, we are definitely coming at you with Only Murders in the Building, and we've decided we're going to recap by doing one episode for season 1 and one episode for season 2, and then we will get into our coverage of the 3rd season in August. The release date is August 8th, so you can expect that coming up, and we will definitely be sending out, announcements and everything on this podcast feed, so don't you worry. Just stay subscribed, and you will not miss a darn thing, darling. We will make sure of that. So yeah, and if you guys don't have Hulu or Disney Plus, there's like a bundle subscription thing going on. Not sponsored, but I will say I highly suggest you look into getting a subscription right now because they're offering a lower price subscription of $10 for Hulu and Disney Plus bundle. It's kind of an amazing deal. Why would you not do it? And for $12, you also get ESPN. That doesn't interest me, but it might interest you. So I will have the link to that as well in the description of this podcast to make it nice and easy for you because I love you. I love you so much, listeners. Now, I think that's all we have at the top here. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Ready for it?
Oh, yeah.
Tits up, baby.
Tits up.
Tits up.
Was truly no less than a crime. Now I've this perfectly marvelous girl in my perfectly beautiful room, and we're living together and having a marvelous time.
Oh, Sally, I'm afraid.
Alrighty. Goodness, my gracious. So this is interesting. Now, before we started podcasting, the three of us realized that we all forgot to pick a most marvelous moment.
Dawes?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't that marvelous?
And I know that, okay, I'm very proud of the fact that I resisted reading almost all feedback this episode because I wanted to try to just take all my notes without any outside input or, I didn't want to like make my brain think one way or the other. I just wanted to feel the way that I feel and like podcast that way. Because there's so many hot takes out there right now. So many people no one feels middle of the road about this show right now. People are either loving the direction it's taken or they are like kind of hating on it. And I think that we actually might be the only ones very middle of the road because, let's face it, we all pretty much just love it. Yeah. But last week we had, we had some hot takes. I don't think we're alone.
No.
So, but I did notice that another one of our listeners, I was like just scrolling through the emails and I did see someone said, we'll get to it when we get to the listener feedback. Someone said, I don't really have a most marvelous moment for this episode. So there's at least one other person out there who felt that same way. And it's not like there wasn't so many marvelous moments, but not one. Maybe it's because there wasn't like a big funny like laugh out loud, like, it was this episode,
It's very
I know, Kara, you were saying,
reflective.
Yeah.
yeah, Kara was saying that you texted like after you started watching it, and you were like, and I'm crying again.
Yep.
No, I did not cry, and I'm a crier. I'm an emotional Pisces, Erica, you feel me on this.
Yes.
I cry like when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm getting a coffee, I cry, just tears are my way. But this episode didn't make me cry. My mouth was just agape.
Yeah.
And I was glued to the screen. That's how I felt about it. I was on the edge of my seat. That's how this was for me.
Well, yeah, that makes sense with that freaking cliffhanger too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah. It almost felt like this was like a bit of a mystery episode.
Mm-hmm.
I was like little detective, like little Nancy Drew Jade. which I love. Anyone who has listened to me podcast knows I love me a mystery. So yeah, but we did finally settle on some marvelous moments. So Erica, take it away.
Okay. So although I had a few moments that really, and again, Kara, you said it perfectly, like reflected on, I felt extremely sentimental this entire episode. But the moment that really stuck with me the most was when Midge confronted Susie in Penn Station and just said, "This is it, Susie. If you don't, I will always know that there was something you could have done and you didn't. And honestly, I don't know where to go from here." And then just leaves. It was just so raw. It was just so like, it's where we're at. And it's, Susie had to make that choice right there and then. And Midge did too. And that's where we're at. And I'm like, it's like, okay. Even though like a lot of people are like upset because there's some things that haven't been like, we haven't seen Lenny. We didn't get to see Imogene. Yeah. There's a lot of loose ends and we're not going to get this like 2-hour finale. We're going to get a probably a 50-minute finale. But ultimately the show is about Susie and Midge and their relationship and how Susie helps propel Midge. Well, we're at that crossroads right now and Susie has to make a decision.
That was a really intense moment.
Yeah, I was very happy to see that moment for sure. And I'm just always happy to see more Midge and Susie together.
Same.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Kara, what was your moment?
Gosh, I have to go with Abe and Abe's speech at dinner and his realization about Midge. Like, that is what made me cry like a baby. Like, I was just kind of losing it. I think part of it too is I might cry again. Good Lord.
Oh, Kara.
I know. Like, and I do not cry very easily. But
yeah.
I couldn't help but think about my dad and oh geez, I did not expect to get all emotional.
This hit home. This hit home for you.
Well,
wow, yeah, I can see that.
And it was one of those things where it wasn't, my dad is not Abe. My dad was probably the best dad I think anybody could have asked for. And now I'm getting, okay, I can do it. But I always heard growing up how proud he was of me and how strong I was and how smart I was and how I could do whatever I wanted to be. And hearing Abe just now have this realization about how, Midge's husband left her out of nowhere. And he's like, her husband just dumped her out of nowhere. And he goes on to talk about her fearlessness and acknowledging that he never had it and his son never had it, and finally settling down and saying, my daughter is a remarkable person, and I don't think I've ever said that to her. I just lost it. I was just like, that makes me so sad. And Abe is just now realizing this when his daughter is, in her 30s and a grown woman. And it just, I don't know, it made me kind of sad for Midge that she hadn't experienced that. And at least now he sees, obviously, how Esther is brilliant, and it's like his whole world has changed. What did he say? I think he said at one point, now I have to find it, that it's his whole perspective on women is
Yeah.
different. And I was like, yeah, Abe.
The roles of men and women
Yeah.
It's just
are like completely wrong.
Yeah.
Excuse
Good job,
that
man.
men and women have their own perspectives and definitely.
Yeah, like it just, but I don't know, hearing him talk about her in that way, like we do not get any sort of real raw emotion from Abe frequently at all. And having him have this like existential epiphany at the dinner table, and then immediately once he's done, everybody just kind of looks at him and is like, well, we should probably order, and like writes it off. I was just like, oh, Abe. Like, I hear you. That was fantastic. And Tony Shalhoub just like completely drew me in. Like, I honestly felt like I was sitting across from him at that dinner table.
If this man does not get an Emmy for this,
Seriously,
I shall eat this microphone. I swear to God, all is lost if he doesn't win an Emmy for that shit. Yeah.
He did an absolutely fantastic job. And like, you know, I'm sure I don't know, I know some people were complaining about it. I saw online about how it was just like a distraction and too long and this and that, but I don't know if I've ever felt more moved watching this show.
Word.
I agree.
Word up.
Even that whole discussion, even with I don't remember the other gentleman's name. The one who
Henry or
the one who shared the story about his wife and realizing all that like that scene was the second watch. I really stopped and listened. It was so quiet and everything was just so dim. Like all you could do was just focus in on the actor and listen to what they were telling you. This monologue of their realization of their lives and their meaning and what they took out of it.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Okay, guys, I think that we should flip the script a little bit. I'm just throwing a monkey wrench in there. Like, as always, I know that Abe and Rose is on our agenda as the last thing we were going to discuss. I feel like we should just roll right into it because my most marvelous moment will shock nobody when I say it was Abe and Rose observing Esther, the candy in the book.
That was so funny.
So, okay, screw it. Let's just talk about this because honestly, I couldn't even pick a most marvelous moment within this scene between Abe and Rose because everyone, you know how much I love my Maren Hinkle. And she didn't have a whole lot to do in this episode, but her chemistry with Tony Shalhoub is just, I could watch these two do anything. I mean, watch an interview with them, listeners. I have a playlist of tons of it'll be in the news or in the description of this podcast. I have a YouTube playlist and there are so many interviews with just the two of them talking and, you know, talking about their experience on this show and working together. And the way that they just like lean on each other and hold each other's hands. And these two love each other so much. They are like soulmates on another level, you know, like they obviously both have spouses and they're in love with other people, you know, but the way that they get each other as actors, like they are actor married.
Yeah.
And I've experienced this. I know when I was in a play where I had to have a spouse and me and this other actor really bonded. And he's literally in my phone in my contacts as like husband. Because we just, and like, I love him in that way as the character, like in that, you know, sometimes the lines like blur when you're an actor and you just can't help but really actually fall in love with someone, even though you're not like wanting to actually love, you know what I mean? It's not a romantic thing in real life.
It's platonic.
But I'm trying to express something that like only if you're an actor, you get what I'm saying. But clearly they have that kind of chemistry that is just such a delight to watch. And so the two of them whispering about, what is it that what's the book? It's Sartre's Being and Nothingness. Are there pictures in Being and Nothingness? No, there are no pictures. Then you should probably put some candy in the book. Even one piece could make a difference. Like
that was really good.
Oh my God, Rose's reaction to the hard candy. That's her.
But you know what?
I don't want to feed her candy, Rose.
But you know what? I was just going to say, like, Rose understands Esther. She knows that she likes candy and she's using that kind of grandmotherly way of getting into that approach to get her attention. I thought was so cute. It was so cute.
Well, yeah. And them ultimately coming to the conclusion that it's like, it shows her brilliance, whether she goes to the book or doesn't go to the book. And I was just like,
so
all right,
going
guys.
to the book would indicate advanced mental faculties and not going to the book would also indicate advanced mental
That was
faculties.
so funny.
And I love the fact that it's Rose that points this out, that well, he says, no one gets being and nothingness. Even Sartre doesn't understand it. I mean, even I'm just pretending to read the book. Pretending to read the book? Well, yes, for the experiment. Well, if she suspects you're pretending to read the book, then she might not go to the book just because she knows that you're trying to trick her. It's like, Rose, you're so smart.
So smart. That was very enjoyable.
And then as Esther's playing this little girl, which I have to say, so yes, this little girl is actually, for some reason on IMDb, it's only listed as Ireland, but this little girl is played by two sisters. So it's Ireland and Sedona Carvajal. Very cool names that they both have. I love that.
That is cool.
She is playing with this dolly, and like toward the end of the scene, you can hear it when she goes, "Uh-oh, Dolly wet herself," and then she goes, "Oh, dumb Dolly!" Like I
wrote that down too. It's so funny.
That was cute.
Just so real. Oh man, I would kill to like watch whoever the person hired to work with the children is on this show, because they do such a good job. There's got to be someone just like right down in front of her, like playing with her, kind of getting her to, I don't know if she was prompted to say those exact lines. Probably not. She probably came up with, just talking to the dolly, like, Dolly wet herself. So, all right. So this whole Abe scene at the restaurant. Did you guys hear that Nancy, the song, was playing in the background very faintly?
Oh, I did not.
Did you catch that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I swear it was Nancy Sinatra. And I only heard that on my second watch because after I watched this episode, I went right back and watched episode 7. And so I watched that ending, and I made myself really watch it. And let me tell you, I watched episode 7. I saw episode 7 with such different eyes after watching this one. So much about the father-daughter stuff.
Ugh.
Whoa. I highly suggest, listeners, if you have only watched these episodes one time, seriously, try going back and watching 7 and go straight into 8. Man, I really thought that it hit in a different way, and I almost want to take back a lot of my criticism. Not all, a lot of it still holds, but some, because I kind of see what they were doing with episode 7. I see the scene with Danny Stevens singing Nancy now, Nancy with the laughing face, I see that so differently now after watching this episode, because I really think that Amy Sherman Palladino not only wanted to do a black and white sitcom, but I really think that she wanted to make us sit with that song and its sentiment for a long time, to put into our minds that Abe is singing to Miriam. This is, if you watch that whole Danny Stevens ending and you imagine Abe saying it all, every word, close your eyes and listen to his words, as he's saying, your name is Skippy. Your mother name, they do know you're not a dog, right? And like, he's saying it in such this is a 50s or 60s sitcom kind of way. But imagine Abe saying it,
right?
Your mother named you Skippy? What? Does she know you're not a dog? Like Abe would say it a little differently in his Abe way, but it's all exactly things that Abe would say. And remember, he's like, we have to have a conversation about this. And then he says something, he's like, that's it. Actually, you know what? That was it. Conversation is over. That's actually, it's funny when Danny Stevens does it in this like, ha ha, laugh track from the audience, kind of way. But if Abe would actually think that, that's how Abe feels. My word is law.
Right.
I am God. I'm the king of the castle, And it's so not funny when you imagine all of those lines that Danny Stevens says coming out of Abe's mouth.
Yeah.
It is actually quite sad.
Right.
And
well, I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence at all that we had that parenting theme throughout the last episode right before moving into this one. Like it was nicely set up. And you're right, like going back, I didn't get to watch all of episode 7 again before going right into it, but I watched the second half. And I started crying this time when I watched the end with Danny Stevens, and I was just like, oh, okay. I see what you're doing, Palladino.
Yeah.
so different. And it's all coming out like when he sits down at that piano after he, is trying to cramp his daughter's style and tell her, you can't go out, you be home by 8:00 or, he's just being unreasonable. And then he sits down at that piano and he starts singing. I just love listening to your laugh when I don't hear your voice every day. Like when, I get sad, or he is talking about losing a daughter or realizing that everything that he's doing, even though it's super overbearing and overprotective and smothering, it's just because he loves his daughter and just wants her to be happy. And that is really what Abe does want, and he's so set in his ways, Abe, and there's this huge parenting theme, obviously, of this whole show, really, but this final season is really a lot about the parent-children dynamic and how things, this episode is really a lot about change and realizing that things have kind of always been this way, but maybe, obviously, you're the one who's changed. And, like, Rose has changed because Rose, in my opinion, like, sees her children as her job, like, not in a nurturing, motherly way, but like a controlling way,
Right.
And when Miriam doesn't allow Rose to influence her life or make decisions for her, she kind of turns to strangers and creates a business of motherly meddling. Shirley is a bit different, still kind of totally smothering and meddly, but she sees her family unit as her job. It's like up to her to feed them and nurture them and keep them comfortable and fed while they do the work.
Yeah.
She's there to keep house, nurse them when they're sick, kiss the boo-boos, be their soft place to fall, two totally different ways of mothering, but both equally smothering and equally like invasive. And, Shirley reminds me a lot of my momsy in that way. Like, I can always count on her for like a cuddle and a there, and she'll pat me on the back and sing me to sleep. And, and Rose would never be nurturing in that way. But everything Rose and Abe do, it is because they just think that they know what's best. That's all.
Yeah.
They're old fashioned, but like I was saying last episode, Rose, it's like, it's not a crime to do stuff like that if you're not hurting anybody, then fine. If you're a little bit old fashioned, if you're a little bit, set in your ways.
Right.
But when Rose does start to get to the point where she's not selfish, she refuses to help Miriam with the children, or it's all about her. I don't know. It's just, I don't really know the where any of this leads, because we don't know what's going to happen with Rose, but it's hard to see that, because I feel we can probably all relate to it. I don't know.
I just wanted to add, like, you brought up the smothering, and I don't have the names of Abe's coworkers, but the one gentleman brought up about the fact that he said that, like, his son said, like, Dad, you're smothering me. And he's like, no, I'm guiding you. And now my son moved away and he doesn't talk to me anymore. And he just like stopped. And, Kara, when you were saying, I don't know if it was you, Kara, who said it, like, or when they decided to just kind of segue out of that uncomfortable silence into that, I almost wonder if they were also reflecting about their own mess ups as parents or what they've done, because they're all kind of like, except for again, I'm so sorry, the lead guy, the boss,
Gabe.
Yeah, Gabe, the head of the newspaper. He's the only one who really felt like he seemed like he was very uncomfortable with the conversation and tried steering it away. But everybody else kind of like was like, oh yeah, oh shit, oh yeah, like looked really down at the very end.
I mean, how do you respond to that? Yeah. Like that was a huge, like, he said and revealed so much, and just that one brief, I thought it was brief. Some people didn't, but that one. Okay, yes,
I don't think they were listening.
It is a 2 minute and 30-second speech. And listeners, if you thought it was too long, if you thought it was unnecessary, well, then you're going to have to fast forward right now 2 minutes and 30 seconds, because I'm playing it again. So here you go.
Grab the tissues.
Enjoy.
We teach, yes, but we foist. I certainly do. I think I emerged from my mother's womb giving advice on how to deal with the umbilical cord. I'm having one of your moments, Arthur. I'm seeing the piles of my life. They're foreign to me.
This is about your family, right?
You tried to help. You tried to guide. Mistakes were made. Everybody makes mistakes. I don't like this wine. Everything I thought about the roles of men and women, I think is completely wrong. I have done exactly the wrong thing for both my children. No, Abe, it's not true. You know, my daughter owns the apartment I'm living in. I thought you bought it. Didn't you say that? My wife came up with that, our cover story. No, my daughter bought it. My daughter was dumped by her husband out of nowhere. That was her saber-toothed. Instead of collapsing from the weight, she emerged stronger. A new person, so I thought. But now I think perhaps that was who she was all along. I never really took her seriously. My son, Noah, I took seriously. I would take him to Columbia with me every week so he could dream of what he could be. I don't remember if I ever did that for Miriam. I don't think it ever occurred to me. And as unfathomable as this career choice of hers is, she's doing it on her own, with no help from me or her mother. Where did this come from? This strength, this fearlessness that I never had, that my poor son never had. What could she have been if I had helped her and not ignored who she really is? My daughter is a remarkable person, and I don't think I've ever said that to her.
Oh, God.
Oh, man. Okay, so there are people... Kara, you okay?
I'm fine. It's all fine.
It's fine. It's fine. Nothing to see here.
Yep.
So people were complaining about Abe's character arc, and I was starting to question it myself. After seeing this episode, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I really think that they did a beautiful job of starting with the Paris changes that Abe was going through, leading his character up to this moment. He's had a series of unfolding mental undoing, whatever, His world has been rocked over and over again. And I think that we've seen Abe, what he's trying to do is hold fast to his beliefs. I mean, it's crazy to think when they said that these men were born in the 18th, the
right.
Very, very late 19th century, turn of the century. So he was born in 1897, if he's 64 in 1961. So 1897.
That gives you a different perspective.
It's crazy. When they said that, I'm like, God damn, you're right.
Yeah.
Wild. So I think that especially like Paris Abe, right? If you remember, Abe was the one who shook them out of the dream of Paris, even when he was in that world of happiness with Rose. Because even in his happiness, he realizes that we don't live here. I think that in Abe's mind, he's allowed to let loose and be on his vacation. I do not think that moment really shook him, changed him to the core.
Yeah.
Because we see him later like apologize. He's remembering hints of what he learned, but it's not completely the transition has not completely taken place yet. I think that he still in those Paris moments in those cafes talking about like Van Gogh, those geniuses who were revering these guys who like were miserable and hacked off their ear, but boy was he a genius. I think that he did even then still think that truly intelligent people are not happy. They're crazy. They're insane. They're not well, and that's the sign. I have a sticker that says sanity is the sign of an unused mind. I've had it for since I was in high school. And yeah, I think that there's an ounce of truth to that. I think all genius is a little bit mad, but I do think that Abe is starting to realize that if he tries to control his grandchildren in the way that he did his children, he will lose them, right? Or they will become unhappy. And I think that for the first time, he sees that unhappiness is not okay.
Yeah.
It's not right to meddle.
Yeah.
Like he says, both Abe and Miriam are paralleled in this episode because they're both realizing that they don't sync up with their lives anymore. They don't sync up with the environment that they're supposed to sync up with. Like Abe is this professor, and he sees now, Gabe is like, no, it's natural you're a teacher. It's natural. You're not meddling, you're teaching. That's what it is. And he's like, no, I'm foisting.
Yeah.
And Miriam, when she's with her friends, she sees how out of touch they are with one another.
Yeah.
She's not this person anymore. She keeps getting these hits of reality in this episode, And Abe's world is rocking. He doesn't believe that only men can be geniuses. He does, because Abe was so stuck in his ways. He was, last episode, a toilet is white, not colored. Some, boys are geniuses, toilets are white. This is just the universal truths, and they are not going to change. Things are the way they are. He's so stick in the mud, and to see him,
his literal world has been shook. And he says too, when Gabe, he's quiet and everybody else is chatting, and Gabe kind of is like, what's going on with you over there? And he says it's just the whole goddamn world. Yeah. And I can't remember who responds, if it's Gabe or somebody else that says, oh, just that? Just, But Abe is having this shift. And at first when he walked in, I was just like, what the hell is this mood? What is wrong with him? What's happening? What's going on? And then as soon as he started talking, I was just like, oh my gosh, he's having this epiphany, and clearly it seems like he is regretting the choices that he made, and how the thing that's really started to stand out for me is when he said, instead of collapsing from the weight, she emerged stronger, and said, a new person, so I thought, but now I think perhaps that's who she was all along.
Yeah.
And going into never taking her seriously, that honestly just kind of broke my heart, because you can see him sitting there being almost what have I done?
Yeah.
And at a time when his kids are already grown, that's rough. That's a rough epiphany to have.
And to go from last week's Abe thinking, he almost saw unhappiness as a badge of honor or a rite of passage. It's not only, Abe's mindset is that genius is a gift.
Yes.
It is genius is a gift signified by unhappiness. That is how when the unhappiness kicks in, the genius has started. Not only inevitable, but desirable as a way of life for men in his family. And Noah says maybe he's a late bloomer, Dad. Maybe he'll get miserable later.
Yeah, don't worry.
A few Weissman men, it didn't kick in until age 7, right? Don't worry, he'll get unhappy soon. And I think Abe realizes that, there are other ways to be. Women are women.
It's a paradigm shift. He is experiencing a full-blown paradigm shift. And
this started when he first saw Miriam on stage. Yeah, in the Catskills, he came to it was the Polynesian night. Remember when he was sitting in that outfit, that hat?
I don't think I'll ever forget that one.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, he drove Midge and Susie home, and he realizes that he doesn't know his own daughter. He saw her blue set, too. So it was talking about his father's her father's penis, having sex with his mind, so she didn't have to think about his penis.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and it's been slowly unfolding and kind of brewing beneath the surface with Abe, and Kara, you brought up how shocking it was that the whole family bought into Abe's mindset of this, genius gift thing, this whole almost superstition that he has, So it's not just Abe. And honestly, you guys, I don't think that it's an accident that a lot of comedians, the list of Jewish comedians is not short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and certainly,
that's very true.
The stereotype of the miserable, neurotic Jew has been made abundant stereotype, like Woody Allen, Lord knows if you've seen one of his films, it's so, and I don't know that it's an accident. Certainly from what I can gather from my Jewish friends, this has like at least a kernel of truth, So yeah, if you really examine that, I think that it might run deeper, and I would, be very interested for any of our Jewish listeners to reach out and tell us about how true that is for you. This whole unhappiness thing.
I hope we get to see him. I hope he says something to Midge. And I have a feeling we probably won't see that. I think this was for us to understand his character shift and his paradigm shift. I don't know if we're going to get a moment where he's, pouring his heart out to Midge or something like that, because I think he still has a really hard time, obviously, expressing his emotions and identifying them. But I kind of wish we could see that. I would not be sad if we got a moment, or at least him, like, maybe standing off in the distance watching her at Carnegie Hall, like, be hauled out by police officers and standing there proud. Like,
I want to just add, what do you think it was the wine that kind of helped these emotions come out a little bit more freer? Remember, he didn't want to drink at first, and
I could see it.
It's kind of forced that, but also he admitted that the cover story that Rose came up about the apartment, like, he admitted what his daughter did, and that's not his house. It's her house that she purchased on his own. And I mean, to admit that to your colleagues in the early 60s, it's
right.
That was pretty big. I mean,
oh yeah,
that's major confessional, but also just that
was huge.
The how exposed he was making himself, like how vulnerable he was, and just kind of like admitting his regret was really, it was really sad, but also refreshing for him to have that moment.
Yeah, and I think that Arthur played that other guy at the dinner table, played by Kenneth Teagar. Beautiful speech that man did. What a moment that was. That really where I started to lean in close to the screen, and my eyes got really big when he started that speech about, they're all grappling with their mortality, and this very relatable speech that I'm a youngish person, and I still understood what he was talking about. All the stuff, all the piles of stuff, and it has his life, it's his wife, but he saw it all like he had never seen it before. God, what a beautiful piece of writing, Mr. Daniel Palladino.
It was.
I just want to say, there's a clear winner here, in my opinion, in this writing duo between husband and wife. I really do have a major preference when you look back at all the episodes that Daniel Palladino has written. I really enjoy his writing. He's got a way. He always he hits you right in the gut, in the heart, just whack, knocked the wind out of me. I wasn't expecting it.
Very relatable. You could pull from that. I mean, I've already been through that with my grandparents. It's very tough to be the children to have to go through things and decide what's to keep and what's something you don't need anymore. But it was.
You experienced that, Erica?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's not something I would like anybody to experience, but it's something you think about. And even, I'm in my 40s, so my parents are in their 70s, so they're definitely going up there in age, and you're always thinking about, when you're going to have that time where you have to think about what to do when everything is different and they're gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Now we see why we cry.
Yeah.
I'm glad we got this one out of the way first.
I was like, this has been happening every now and then. I keep telling my parents, I was like, you guys are just not allowed to die, okay? You have to stay here forever because I don't want to think about it. I tell my dogs the same thing. Like, it's not going to happen. I'm going to lose it if we see Abe or Rose and what actually happens to them in the finale.
Okay. So getting into, before I forget, I just want to call out Henry, the other guy, played by Richard Breen. He's done a bunch of other stuff with Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino, and I really enjoyed these two men, Richard Breen and Kenneth Teagar. Richard Breen is the one who was talking about his son leaving because he smothered him. Both of them, they did an excellent job.
They did.
So
they really did.
Okay, getting into I actually think. Oh yeah, okay. So last episode, he was treating I just wanted to say, last episode he was treating children like objects, like not people.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with the beginning of this episode when we saw that scene with Esther. He was, only interested in children as an extension of himself, not their own people with their own unique talents that have nothing to do with him, And like before last episode when he was at the piano with Ethan, and he was like, I'm busy with the boy. Like he doesn't even know his name.
Yeah.
He has there's nothing more that he can get. Yeah. There's no love for this child. It's just, I need to teach him piano so that I can bring the genius out of him already. Like this is my duty and I have to do it because children are like, with Rose seeing the mothers seeing children as like their job. Same thing, like children are an obligation. They're an extension of me. They're there to show a part of me to the world that will live on. And so surely there's going to be something wrong with you if you don't believe what I believe, if you don't do with your life what I think is best. Why would you not think that this is, I know best, I'm me, I'm so great. It comes off as very selfish. But the thing is, the reason that these characters were able to love them so much is because it's played with humor, it's written very well, and I don't genuinely see them as malicious. I don't see them as cruel, as bad parents. I just think that this is truly what they believe.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned beliefs.
Well, that's how they were raised, too. They don't know any different. If they were raised the same way, they're doing what their parents taught them and what society expects from them. But I don't fault them for that for the most part, especially thinking about too the fact that they have gone through World War II relatively recently. We see that kind of at the beginning of the show. There are still references to World War II, and people that went through that, like they're a different type, like they're a tough generation.
Yeah.
And I think that comes out in parenting styles for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So before we leave this scene, the whole wine thing, right? Like Erica, you mentioned the wine being maybe the thing that gets him to talk because, he's drinking this angular wine, right? And every time we cut to his face, he is sipping. They're really wanting us to see him sipping that wine.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, when they order the acidic angular wine, the guy is like, are you trying to kill me? Ominous, right? I think it's too on the nose, though, to think that this Abe is going to have a heart attack right now. So I looked it up. I Googled a little bit.
Well, and
acidic.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. Acidic wine it's the Google says it. So I'm guessing that I'm not a wine drinker myself, especially I do not like red wine. But acidic wine can be so like intense that the heartburn that you will get from drinking a lot of red wine, especially on an empty stomach, can be mistaken for a heart attack.
Oh.
So that combined, so that's my little Nancy Drew, like, I think I solved the mystery. I don't think it's a heart attack. I think it's symptoms of a heart attack and you might be rushed to the hospital. But the waiter says they're serving the Dover sole in two ways. And one of them is like a citrus infusion or marinade or whatever. So I think that a citrus fish, just Nancy Drew over here, combined with a very angular acidic wine, could give him some heartburn.
Well, that's pretty frequent. Heartburn and indigestion, it mimics symptoms of a heart attack.
Yeah.
But at least we know he doesn't die then.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like, it's too, because we see him in, what was that, the wedding to Philip Roth in 73.
But I think it will. I think that this is what's going to happen. If I were to play, seeing the future here, I think that he will go get rushed to the hospital, maybe think that it's a heart attack, and that will prompt him to finally, say to Miriam, like,
I could see that.
Almost coming to, grips with like my death made me realize that I've got to tell you what I just
my gosh.
And so that will give us the final touchings that will prompt the final touching scene that will end the show and make us just die crying.
Well, and remember when Moish was in the hospital, like he had a heart attack and that got Abe to like write down and kind of like pour his heart out because he thought Moish was dying.
Yeah.
So I could see that coming
that
up.
was up until this episode and this moment in this episode, that scene with Abe reading to Moish in the hospital. And God, did I fall in love with Kevin Pollak in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, did he do so much with no words. I mean, the two of these guys, that was my favorite Abe moment until this episode happened. And
I cried then, too.
This scene, listeners, is not only my favorite Abe moment, it is my favorite Tony Shalhoub moment of all time ever. And I love Tony Shalhoub. All things Tony Shalhoub.
Beautiful.
This is some of his finest work. Yeah. And to say that this scene is too long, I think that because of the parallels you can draw between what Abe and Miriam are both going through, and we'll get to it when we talk about Miriam. Why am I calling her Miriam? Like, the whole episode.
Because Abe calls her Miriam.
You're right. Oh my God. I'm such an actor. Like, I get into the mindset of the different characters I'm talking about. I really am doing that. It's so true. I can't call her Midge. It's weird. Yeah, so the parallels that you can draw between the two of them and what they're both going through, I think speaks to the whole show. And I think that this scene was exactly the right length, you know?
Yeah.
I could have used less Gordon Ford. I'm just saying. Always less.
He wasn't too much in this episode, which was good.
No, yeah. You know what I'm just realizing? Any Gordon Ford makes me just, I don't like you. No, thank you.
Oh, gosh.
I just get very like, when he's on my screen. Something about him. Anyway. But Erica, you had more notes, right?
Oh yeah. So I believe it was when the scene opened that they mentioned that how Princess Margaret was hysterical. And why was she hysterical? Because of Abe's daughter. And it's just like, if only they knew or realized, like, you know, there was somebody who was responsible and it wasn't Princess Margaret. So I thought that was cool. And also, Abe mentioned that he was 64, that immediately in my head, you know, the Beatles song When I'm 64 popped into my head.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, and Abe, like, clearly he's had quite a revelation here. Because even from the opening scene, I was cracking up because I knew as soon as, what's her name, Mrs. Moyer walked in to talk to Joel and Midge, as soon as she said, he's been rude, disrespectful, I was like, holy shit, she's talking about Abe.
It's Abe.
Like,
I thought the same thing. Yes, Segway Jones. Okay, let's get into this.
Like,
into this section.
That was so funny. Like, he's been rude, disrespectful, incredibly disruptive.
The pipe smoking.
Even smoking a pipe. It's like, no. And the fact that Joel and Midge are sitting there cracking up together at the thought of Abe causing all of these issues and throwing tantrums at the school made me really happy. And it
made me like them together.
Yeah.
Like, I go so back and forth. And this episode did not help me figure out how the fuck I feel about Joel.
Honestly.
Because I saw them both. I get why they go together. They get
work.
each other. And they're best friends at this. They remind me so much of my parents after they got divorced, you guys. I got to tell you, like, my parents, the thing about them that kept them, I think that they got married in the first place, is because they shared a sense of humor. I have a very strong sense of humor. I have a very strong, like, point of view on life. And I am not shy about saying it. And my parents, like, gave me this sense of humor thing runs real strong in my family. We are all very funny. I'm the only actor in my family, but I have a family that is incredibly theatrical because of their big personalities, and everyone's a ham and a half, right? And I get it why Joel thought he could be a stand-up comedian, because him and Midge think the exact same way. They think that life is funny. They're like, look at this teacher lady. And Midge is, you know, looking at Mrs. Moyers thinking, how can I put this in an act? You know, and
she says, we know funny. She doesn't say, I know funny and this is funny. Like, she and Joel know funny. And watching them together, like, I get it. I'm all on board with Joel at this point. I'll just say it.
Yeah, you are. You always have.
Well, because this scene in particular, and watching his facial expressions and the acting that Michael Zegan did to convey so much without saying anything, when we see his flashback, you know, to Midge meeting Moish and Shirley, and kind of reminiscing, and he keeps looking over at her kind of fondly when Midge is cracking up, like, and what does Moish say to him? He said, "This, my son, is a girl you don't let go of." And he looks at me, he said, "This pop is forever." And I think he meant that. Like, he believed it, he meant it, and you know what?
And he has stayed true to it.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them, we see Midge doesn't go on tour later because she wants to stay and close to him while he's in prison and like kind of take care of him that way. Neither one of them will leave the other.
No. And I think
that even if they don't get married, they're always kind of married.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have that connection.
Right. Yeah. When you share children, it's like you're tied together, you know, like it or not.
Well,
so there's that.
And her flashback when Midge is kind of reminiscing and thinking about, you know, they're fighting at first, arguing because he had given her the signal like an hour ago to go home when they were with his buddies. And, you know, she gets out of the taxi and starts walking towards the bridge, and Joel insists that the bridge is in the opposite direction. And of course, Midge is right. But then they start dancing because their song is playing in the cab and they hear it, and I don't know, I was a sucker for it. I was like, this is so sweet.
Oh, yeah.
And
the cab driver was a sucker for it too. He was just like,
I know.
Aw.
And their song was "You Belong to Me" by Joe Stafford. And I was sitting there thinking about how they do kind of belong to each other. They are constantly, all throughout their lives, they are connected. They find their way back to each other. And even though it might not work romantically, they are connected. Like, I think Amy Sherman Palladino, to a certain extent, wants us to see them as soulmates. But
yeah.
And Midge, like, she's
which they are
smiling.
Which they are.
Totally
you don't have
are.
to be married to be soulmates.
Yeah.
And then I know I saw a few people, like, I saw Facebook comments here and there when I was scrolling about the whole Penny Pan thing, and seeing Joel in 1958 like get kind of flirty with Penny. I will say I love how many callbacks there were to the pilot episode in this.
Same.
And the
yes.
fact that she is sitting there opening
with
the pencil sharpener, and she was like, this newfangled thing, like, I've got to figure it out. I was just like, oh my gosh. But Joel, like, looking at her.
Did you get the other callback when he says, "What would I do without you?" And remember when Joel had the really crappy time slot, and Midge is like, "Oh, really? It's a bad time slot." He's like, "I go on at 1 a.m."
Yep, like 1:45.
It's a terrible. Yeah, and she kept saying, "We'll fix it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. What would I do without you?" You'd go on at 1 a.m. or 10. What was it? 10 p.m. I can't remember.
I think it was. I rewatched 1 and 2. It was because
good for you.
Imogene and Archie were coming to see them, and he got a time slot at 1:45 a.m.
The Clearys are here.
So sweet, but like, and Penny Pan, and he says like, "Hey, you feel like going to get a drink?" And you see him, like, in that moment, in the flashback, happy. And when it cuts to his face in this moment, as he's reflecting on that, like, it is pained, like, he is clearly regretful. And I don't think, you know, it's far off to say that he is spending the rest of his life making up for that mistake, that he betrayed her. And it's kind of sad subtle to me. No.
I think that this is pretty much screaming out at this point, the writing, that they are going to, you know, Amy and Daniel are like, they are going to end up together. Like, that's kind of how, look at their song, look at the lyrics, you know, it's, you belong, just remember when a dream appears, you belong to me. I'll be so alone without you. Maybe you'll be lonesome too.
They are hammering it home. And
I think so.
Obviously they want us to love Joel.
Obviously. Yes. Redeem Joel. And it's like, ooh, sorry. We get it already. Erica, how do you feel about this whole Joel Midge thing?
Well, you know, I don't know if it was episode 1 or 2. I'm like, you know, I really don't want them to get back together. And I think that I'm also back on the team. I think they did a really nice way of just reminding us of how the relationship started, how it, you know, where it fizzled, but also where it's coming to. But there's no mention of May. So we have to just kind of like go, okay, he's past that. That's done. But
I get the sense, real quick, before I forget, I think that they had a storyline planned for May that had to change because I think they had to do a little bit of backpedaling because Stephanie's shoe blew up so big, I think.
Yeah, and that's fair.
And Shirley references it a couple of times, like back early on. So they don't entirely forget about it. But I can also buy that Joel is... he can't change anything. He can't do anything about it.
And he moves on fairly quickly.
Yeah. He's powering through.
This is not called The Marvelous Joel Maisel, y'all. Like, if this were a show about Joel, I'm sure we would get more of his feelings for how he misses May.
Definitely.
But, I think they're doing right by not constantly mentioning her. Because then it would just draw... It's like the reason that they're just giving us enough Imogene to make it make sense. And also to let us know, like, we don't want that. They're honoring the relationship of Imogene, because Imogene was a very long established character and she's still a part of Midge's life, which I really enjoy knowing that we can't get Imogene. I enjoy the way they're including her, but to include May more would, I think, be weird.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I don't. It's not that I don't miss it. I just think that it's just that we've been led to just know that Joel is for Midge. He's all about Midge. He only cares about Midge. We've talked about that, on and on. So I'm okay with that in the end. That but I did love, like you talked about the throwbacks. I love that they brought back her blonde hair. I thought back right when she bleached her pubic area and she was running around the little courtyard and all. But I love that pilot so much. It was adorable. But I loved all the throwbacks in that scene. And I also loved just the kind of the attacks at the teacher. Like, oh, did I startle you? Oh, I do that all the time. It was so good.
When they...
Oh, and when she said at the end, "Can we go?"
Like,
and she said,
"Read my mind."
May go, and I was just like, "Oh gosh,
Mrs. Moyer is
because how
too
many
much.
times like asking a teacher like in school, like, "Can I go to the bathroom?" You may go to the bathroom.
One of my favorite,
fine.
Arden Marin is her name. I love this actor. When she says in the beginning, "We've never banned a grandparent before. Even the happy group seems dismayed."
I love it.
I will say, as someone who works in the field, I don't correct the parents, but also the parents are not afraid of me. I'll tell you that. It's very, very different now.
I thought it was funny that she is such like her little sweet, cute, like high pitched voice. She's but she's like scary at the same, I thought it was a really great, like, just the way that they created that character is so interesting and layered.
I was just going to say one other thing about the penny pan thing, Joel asking her to go get a drink, and then when we flash back to the present as him and Midge are kind of like having a little moment, like a good chat as they're leaving, and he asks her to go get a drink sometime. So, they don't talk about the kids.
That's right, but not talking about the kids.
I kind of saw it as like Joel being hopeful that they could rekindle something. Like, he was sitting there, thinking throughout that meeting, obviously flashing back to, his parents meeting her and his, very ill-conceived affair with Penny Pan and regretting it. And he's trying, like, you can see that the way he walked her walk away too, like, he was just looking at her with this almost wistful look on his face. And I was just like, ugh.
They both were, though.
Yeah.
Midge, too, So, and you notice that they both looked at each other in this wistful way when they were both doing this asshole thing. Like, Midge brought her cupcakes, and, like, her cupcakes were better than this other lady's cupcakes. She's like, ha! And then Joel, like, talking about faking a war injury, like, what? They're both assholes.
To get out of coaching, like, the dads are just as bad. They asked me to coach something. I wanted to be like, that's pretty normal, bro. Like,
right? They're like, God forbid we should have to get involved in a way that we don't prefer.
They were
it's like, God forbid,
not meant to be parents. Like,
no,
but they are so perfect for each other.
Right. So this is the thing. This is where I'm torn because there's that, right? There's present day Joel and Midge that are divorced, and I see them like I saw my parents. I love them together. And I remember as a kid thinking, I love seeing my parents together, and I'm so glad they're not married.
Yeah.
It's like I was so delighted that my dad could come and still like spend time with my mom and my sister, and we would all like have fun together, watch movies together, like play together, you know, and we could be more of a family because daddy had his girlfriend and mommy had a boyfriend, and they were happy that way. And like I said, they were still like friends with benefits, you know, they were loving each other in all the best ways of marriage, except actual marriage, because they both needed to be with other people too. It was kind of like an open marriage or whatever, but they were doing it divorced and living separately.
Right.
So I know it sounds weird, but like it was incredibly healthy for me, and it was a much better life
but that
to live as a
makes
kid.
sense. Like if it works for you, it works, and clearly that was something that worked for them and worked for all of you. And I think that's kind of I don't know, like it can be a sign of a more evolved way of thinking and a more mature way of seeing relationships, because sometimes this is a whole other tangent, but I do think it's possible that people might not get everything that they are looking for in one relationship, and two people who then are like, well, I can acknowledge that. Like, I have no problem with an open relationship. I think that, that can be healthy, especially in situations where there's, a family involved.
And so there's that, right? There's like this modern way of seeing Joel and Midge that I really like them together. But then these flashbacks made me remember the obnoxious Joel. Like Midge is being the perfect wife, entertaining the street hockey buddies, and then she's like being all nice to him. Like the bridge may have been the other way when you were a boy. Like so
Very
gross.
true.
Like shut up, Midge. He's being an asshole. He's like, I'm married to Barbara Stanwyck here.
Yeah.
Like being all like it's the Joel that I hate. Like this little spoiled brat man, just like fucking Gordon Ford. There is nothing in the world I hate more than a baby man. Just grow a pair, dude. Like fucking man-child. I have no tolerance. So for some reason, the flashbacks with Joel and Midge, and like even the dancing in the street, I hate when Joel dances with her in the street. Like you are making this taxi man wait. When he proposed to her with that carnival song,
That is so true.
I was like, ew, I hate this. I hated it. I hated that proposal. All of them stopping traffic to dance. I was like, fuck off, man. You are a dick. Like you entitled little piece of, I really hated Joel. I really hated
when
him,
they
guys.
brought up Penny Panigan, I was just like, don't do this to me. This is going to piss me off. Like, as soon as she popped up on my screen, I was just like, Joel's such a dick. Like, I went immediately back to it. I was just like, oh, yeah. He fucked
Michael
this up.
Zegan was able to go back to the old Joel, like, really seamlessly. And then, because
seamlessly.
Like, think about how many years it's been since he was like that. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know. And this is what I'm saying.
I think he does not get enough credit.
And sometimes I think that Michael Zegan is influencing the way that I see this character. I'm shocked that I'm doing this because
I think it is.
I am usually really good at keeping them separate because I'm an actor and I know that I'm watching actors, but I can't do that with Joel. Like, Michael Zegan makes me like Joel more and more, especially this season. But I also do think it's because I like the Joel character this season.
Yeah. He has definitely grown.
Yeah.
Like, that is a fact. Like, Joel is not the same person that he was when he went and fooled around on Midge with Penny Pan. And I still don't think he's the strongest guy. Like, there are still some character flaws there, but he's different now. And I think he truly does admire Midge and see her talent. And he, just like her dad said, like, don't pick a weak man. And she picked a weak man and Joel couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
Don't pick a weak man. Just saying. I have more about that later.
Don't.
But,
Yes, okay, you're reading my mind.
Oh, as always, I love us. I love us. Okay, is there any more notes for this scene before we move on?
Nope. Next is just the transition from, I did think it was funny how he referenced all of her college friends hating him, assuming because he, cheated on her. But going to college, just the ladies' luncheon for the class of 53, I was just like, oh, this is gonna be fun. It's gonna be interesting.
Which is 8 years ago. I don't know why they call it a 10-year reunion because it's definitely 8 years, but okay. That was odd.
That was kind of funky. But I don't know. I also, maybe it was because it had been a long week or something, or if it was, I think it was also intentionally supposed to be kind of grating, the immediate giggling and high-pitched.
Oh, this whole
could
thing
not.
with these chicks was
Yeah.
it was supposed to be
It was
annoying.
just like, they're doing a very good job. I did like
Yeah.
that, though. I was like, that's kind of clever. Bring in the cavalry when you need the flask to liven up a
This
party.
giant flask, yeah.
But that whole scene, I mean, I know that a lot of people seem to think that this felt like a filler episode, but I think it was so
I didn't think it was at all.
What?
impactful. Like every time I saw that pop up on Facebook, or I think I saw a couple of Reddit comments about it, and I was just like, no, this was huge.
Well, and also, like, if you don't like this kind of shit, you don't like the Palladinos,
Exactly.
and do not watch the Gilmore Girls,
God.
because this kind of fast-paced, like, high-pitched dialogue is what they do best. These kind of bantery, like, women who are just like, because we all know these women, don't we? And we've all, you've been this woman. You know you have, bitch. Like, don't even try to tell me you haven't, listener. You out there saying that you're nothing like this. Oh, yes, you are. In your way, you are.
We all have our moments.
Yeah, we all have our bitch moments.
Well, and it's just one of those things, like, I don't know. And seeing Midge go back into that situation after the growth we've seen from her since we first saw her around her college friends back in, like, episode 1 and 2 of the first season, it was just so glaringly different. I was like, this is not you anymore. Like, this
she
just
doesn't
fit.
even remember what she did back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's so far different.
Yeah.
That was very interesting. I did think it was hilarious, though, when they were all sitting around the table and, talking about what they bid on. And the one girl who got lawn darts.
Yeah.
And,
oh, God.
Like, they wouldn't sell them if they were dangerous. And I was just like...
They were banned.
Gosh. Yeah, they were banned, like, the first time in 1970 or something. Like, a poor kid, I think it was a 7-year-old girl that died at one point. Like, just... so dangerous, and I appreciated that line that they threw. They wouldn't sell them if they were dangerous.
They don't know about the toys from the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Mm-hmm. But, they kind of hit every stereotypical, like, gossipy note with this group of women, like, giggling about the girl who ended, like, the student who ended up with Mr. D, and speculating about, marriage and all sorts of, like, the giggling was driving me crazy.
And then the two-faced way, they were like, oh, hi, when she came by, oh.
What was her name?
And,
it wasn't Corky, was it? Is that what it was? There was
I think
something like that. Oh, we always hated her. And they're like, oh, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, that was rough. But I did think it was funny how we got the throwback reference to Palmer.
Yeah.
That guy that Midge dated before Joel, who was dull as hell. And I did think it was funny. I wanted to go back and look at Petra, because Petra was one of the only names that I remember standing out to me. And it is a different actress than
it is.
the girl in the first one. And I flashed back to when she said...
My roommate was fat.
Yeah, when Midge was like... Petra says Midge gave the toast at our wedding and she stole the show. I was like, so were you at Midge's wedding? Because that's when she says during her speech, my roommate Petra was friendly and fat, which was perfect.
You're so right.
Like, I'll have someone to eat with who won't steal my boyfriend. And I was just like, did Petra enjoy that? Because I doubt it. Like,
Kara, good call, Kara. Good call.
Petra did mention her about her weight in her little message to her older self.
Did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh,
ew.
Because I remember that line back in the pilot.
Palladinos again.
Yeah, and I was like, maybe Sherman Palladino really hates fat people. Like, this happens all the time where they'll throw something out there or make a joke. And I was like, damn it, guys. Like,
oh, yeah. They're great at being sensitive to all kinds of groups of people.
Oh, yeah. I was just like, that was awful. But that stuck out to me. I was just like, Petra. Yeah. But the way that
I was like, this is funny, right? This is sure
rude.
But them referencing Midge, like, in her little comedy career, like, it was so it was like a foregone conclusion to them that this was just something she was doing for fun right now.
Yeah.
That this was a chapter, you know, like she was saying, it's going to be something you can tell your grandkids. Like, that's great. And the fact that Midge sitting there with these women, like, you could see it start to dawn on her, like, no, like, this is what I want. Like, I don't fit in like this anymore. This is not who I am anymore. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of sealed it when she called back to what Lenny Bruce told her at the end of the pilot. Like, I got so happy when she said that line. She was like, if there is anything else in the entire world that I could possibly do to earn a living, I would. Anything. I'm talking dry cleaners to the Klan, crippled kid, portrait painter, slaughterhouse attendant. And then she says, you know, just something a friend told me once. And I was like, oh my God, Lenny. And it was...
They said, why do you do it? And she said, because I love it. She did like the Lenny snap. She did like the snap point Lenny thing, you know, that was good.
So good. And her remembering that, because that was, you know, what, after she gets put in the same cop car with him when she gets arrested after showing her boobs at the gaslight, and she ends up bailing him out of jail, which I had forgotten about. I completely forgot that she bailed Lenny out. And that's when she has that exchange with him and asks him, you know, why do you do it? And the fact that stuck with her all those years, and that she has the recall to say exactly what he said.
Meant a lot to her, though, and clearly it's been in her mind. She looks up to Lenny, you know?
She really, clearly, really does. And I am going to be upset if we do not see him again. Oh, and I will say, I did rewatch the pilot after all of these references kept coming back up. And the first time we see Lenny Bruce is in the pilot when Midge and Joel are at that burlesque show. And, you know, Lenny gets on stage and Joel's like, you know, this is the guy I wanted you to see.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing that now after almost being at the end, I was like, I kind of love this, that Joel is the one that introduces her to Lenny, and that kind of sparks this whole entire journey. We do know the Palladinos love full circle moments.
Kara, you're saying it right now. Listeners, Kara is just giving me this really great idea. What I'm going to do in my multitude
I was going to say
spare time.
What is that?
Yeah. I'm going to rewatch season 1. If you guys have time, listeners, might be a good idea, if you're in the mood, to go back and just play season 1 again, have it on in the background, whatever, let the words kind of wash over you, because if there's one thing the Palladinos love, it is a full circle, and we're already getting a lot of them. And so you might appreciate the last episode, and it might make more sense to you after seeing what the first season was, because they're going to be bringing a lot of things home.
Well, I had a little epiphany, not an idea, when I was watching the first season, because watching the pilot again, it ends, you know, that's when we see Midge's career start. And last episode, I mentioned that I was kind of upset that we hadn't gotten to see her big break a little bit sooner. But now I kind of love it. We saw in the very first episode the launch of her career, her love for comedy. She's getting arrested and hauled away for showing her boobs in the gaslight. And Susie sees something in her. So I am totally seeing in the last episode that we see her big break. We see her at Carnegie Hall now that she is successful. It's this infamous night. We see her getting dragged off by police, and it's a nice bookend to the pilot episode where we see that spark. She gets arrested, she meets Lenny, and if she finds out in this last episode that Lenny has died or something like that, if they play with time a little bit, or if Lenny comes back and then she has this Carnegie Hall performance where she's made it, like, I could appreciate that type of full circle. I think that would work.
I love that.
And spoiler alert, I will say,
what are you spoiling?
Who makes an appearance and is listed in the final episode?
Oh, yeah.
Because Luke Kirby is on the cast list on the final episode, so we're either seeing him in a flashback in present time or something. And I'm feeling better going into it after this episode.
Yeah, I think it's because they continued the story from last week. Like, we didn't go back and forth. I think we're just gonna, I hope it's just smooth sailing.
No flash forwards this time.
Yeah. So I loved how the girls brought up the fact that they, that when Midge said that, oh, she was, a virgin until she was married. And like, no, when you were a fiance, that they actually were the scene where we saw them. And I think that's like one of the only like more explicit sex scenes that we've seen in this show was, Joel and Midge on the tree.
Yes.
I was like, funny. That was another pilot callback.
Yes.
Yeah. And I loved how that was the night she got engaged, y'all. And it did not seem like it was her first time.
No. And then we didn't really talk about when they went to visit the old dorm rooms and the way the girls looked at them.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, are you looking for your kids?
That was so funny.
They're like, we're in our 30s, but the lark was really hilarious when she cleaned up their carpet and then trying to kind of like try to like act cool with the kids, like they're like, oh yeah, you're listening to that rock, and they were listening to Runaway, and she brought up the Andrews sisters, and they're like, what?
Oh my gosh.
And those girls were just
like, my mom has that.
Yeah,
my mom has that.
Do you notice the difference between those two songs too is the Toolie Oolie Doolie by the Andrews sisters. The lyrics are, when a Swiss boy comes a calling on a Swiss miss in June, and then they're like, Toolie Oolie Doolie, and make your dreams come true. It's like all about finding your love. And then what's like Runaway? It's like, I'm walking in the rain, tears are falling, and I feel the pain. Like, it's someone who's alone, and they're like,
God.
why did you leave? And like, it's just totally different sentiment from, what Midge's life is like.
Yeah.
That was funny. And obviously their notes that they left.
Oh, and before we get there, I just want to say, I think that the scene where Midge was like cleaning up and she said, what am I, 80? I just think that I was wondering, like, why is this scene here? What is it trying to show? I just think it's meant to show that like Midge is realizing she's not a kid anymore. She's older than she feels.
Yeah.
Like you're her, and especially in the 60s, to be 30, it's a much older 30. It's a much older age than 30 is now.
Very
it's
much.
time for her to go after what she wants. Like, she's no more waiting around.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, she's starting to feel like chomping at the bit here, like this has got to happen. She's only been at this for 3 years, which I'm kind of like, to be an actor, it's like, yeah, I've been acting my whole life and I'm still not where, I want to be. But that's the nature of, but I think it's different in the 60s, I will say. And also to come to something so late in life, to just get started, you're going to be feeling a little more anxious. And that's what I think.
That fire is relit, like it is ignited, and that's why ultimately later when we see her go confront Susie, I was just like, yep, not confront, but it was a confrontation. Actually, like, no, that's the right word. Like, that was an intense moment, but she is. You can see that drive in her back, and I liked. Like, I feel like I thought that was very realistic, and I don't know, I was kind of...
We'll get there. I don't want to go into the Susie stuff too much yet. I want to stick with just the finishing up what we have for this scene. Erica, what else you got for this scene?
It was just like one little thing in there where they're when they were reading the notes, and I forget which girl said it. She's like, oh, that was my Khalil Gibran phase, and I gave it away with my jump ropes. I was like, ew, bird.
That was funny.
I'm like, poor Khalil Gibran. His work is beautiful.
Yeah, the notes were Midge's idea, and she doesn't remember that they were.
I thought that was interesting. Like, and her note, obviously, like, I think the way the Palladinos structured this episode and wrote it with Hetty later echoing this don't that Midge wrote to herself, with an exclamation mark, that played out beautifully.
It did.
But when you guys first watch heard that Midge's note said don't with an exclamation mark, what did you think of? like what came to mind first.
Thinking of Midge where she is at now, I probably think like, don't give up, you know, don't let them get in your way. But back then, she probably would, who knows what she was thinking, because she was such a different person back then. Like, she was so more driven to be a wife and a mother. It wasn't, you know, there was no other.
Yeah, right. 3 before 30, right?
Like, you know, but I really would love to be in her headspace from when she was in college, because I really don't know what she was really telling herself. But now it makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Well, when you write notes like this to your older self, you're kind of thinking of, okay, when I'm a parent, when I'm thinking of myself as like a child, what would I say to child me? And the only parenting advice Midge ever got was don't, from Abe. That's the only thing she ever heard from him. Don't do this,
true.
don't do that. Don't go to college there. They'll have terrible deli. Don't pick a weak
And
man.
Rose too. Rose as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And don't is like Abe's thing. He wants children to be afraid. Don't be brave. Don't be fearless. You know how many things there are to be afraid of? There's thing he had that amazing speech to
was
Ethan.
Fantastic. But it's true, like they are not yes people. Like, you can do this, like
No.
you can do that. It's all don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Like everything is set out. And I don't know. I went back and forth a lot because when I first heard her say don't with an exclamation mark, I was just like, what the hell did that mean for her back then? Because I could see how it was pertinent now.
Right.
But I don't know. Or like, don't forget like what this time period felt like. Don't forget. I don't know. Like, I went through a loop. I even paused the episode for a couple minutes.
I bet our listeners have a bunch of ideas, and I bet we're going to talk about this more in listener feedback. So let's save, maybe I think other things might come up for us too.
Yeah.
We'll get other ideas from our amazing listeners, because goddamn, we have such great listeners, smart people out there that talk to us. Thank you, making us look better.
Oh, I will say, sorry, what was this episode? The princess and the plea. Don't, I'm assuming that would be a possible interpretation of what the plea is. Did you guys think that at all?
What do you mean, pleading to who? Because I thought that it was the plea to Susie.
That's what I was
that too. Like, I
give me my break.
That's
Give
the
this
thing.
girl a break.
Like,
that's the plea that we're all pleading.
Or don't, or maybe like don't.
But like,
do
don't
this to me, or
give
don't
up. Like,
don't give up on me.
Yes,
yeah.
Like all of those types, and then also with Abe, like, I just like, don't give up. Like, don't let this go. Like, don't waste any more time. Like, the whole episode could be seen.
Even Joel could be like that.
Yeah.
Joel also doesn't want to waste any more time, because he asked
Right.
Midge, let's go out sometime.
I feel like that it's all kind of, there's a lot of little subtle double meanings that you could look into it. But I don't know. I really like
this negative reinforcement thing instead of positive. Yeah, they're not yes people. That's for darn sure. One other thing I want to comment on is how they keep commenting on how everything has gotten smaller. And that's a theme with Abe too, right? Because he says, I think that